Hey team, welcome back to another exciting episode of the Intentional Agri-Business Leader Podcast. This is your host, Mark Jewell, and today we're talking sorghum. I've got the president, CEO, Greg Ruehle of Sorghum Growers on with us here, guys, and excited to dive in and learn more. So Greg, welcome to the show.
Mark, thanks so much. It's great to be with you today.
Absolutely. What does it mean for you, Greg, to be intentional?
Well, it's such a great question. It really makes you, I think, stop and be retrospective a bit. I jotted down a few words that I thought were relevant. Being connected, I think, is an important attribute. Being an active listener, listening with intentionality. Your intent is to really hear what that person is saying and trying to convey to you, even if they're struggling to find the right words to put their thoughts together. You need to ask intuitive questions. You need to ask questions that help them get to the answer that they're trying to convey. And, I'm thinking a lot of this, around the relationship I have with employees or other folks that I interact with regularly. And then the last one I wrote down is sort of a capstone to all of it. But I think we all benefit if we bring a little intellectual curiosity to the job every day. Being intellectually curious, never being afraid to ask the question why or what or learn more. I've been doing this a while. I've earned the gray hairs on the top of my head, but I still like to approach work with that intellectual curiosity that I think is critical to being a successful leader.
Yeah, I think that leads to just more joy in it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, those are usually fun questions when you're getting people to talk about things that are important to them, whether it's work or play or home or family, faith, whatever those things are that are critical to them. Absolutely, it raises the opportunity for that to be a more joyful conversation, more open, honest, and real.
Yeah. Beautiful. I love it. Well, let's talk about Sorghum Growers and share a little bit about your organization. Give us a little background on you, if you would, Greg. We want to learn more about this, and we want to learn about sorghum.
Absolutely. Happy to do so, Mark. So joined the National Sorghum Growers in November of 2023 as executive director. It's actually a new role. It's a role that Tim Lust has filled for about 30 years and continues to play a very active role in the sorghum industry. The reason for adding that executive director role was a really simple one. As opposed to what the contraction that a lot of associations are seeing, sorghum industry is actually growing, and the program offering that we have continues to increase. We're adding acreage to the crop base each year, and we're adding growers then that are responsible for planting and harvesting those acres. So we're very fortunate to be in a growth mode in the sorghum industry. The idea we can attribute it, I think, to several things. Certainly, in the most recent set of years, strong export demand has been a big driver in sorghum prices and the expansion of sorghum acres. And that continues to be the case. 2024 looks to be another strong export year, and sorghum that's in the ground now in the south looks phenomenal. It's had a lot of rain. As you move towards the high plains where I live in southwest Kansas, we need to pull a little bit of that rain further north and be able to get this very resource conserving crop in the ground and give it a chance to grow in 2024. Prior to being here, I've been around for a number of years, done a lot of different things. I've worked most recently in a startup in the carbon and sequestration kind of regenerative ag space. Before that, a great 8 years at Servitech, based here in southwest Kansas. Prior to that, stints in both the livestock side and the agronomy sides of trade associations, everything from cattle to seed over my career. So a lot of time in Washington, D.C. over that career. Back there now and staying pretty busy with all the discussions and deliberations around the Farm Bill that are underway here in early 2024.
Of course. What hope does the Farm Bill potentially hold for sorghum growers and production?
I think the greatest hope that it holds for all of agriculture is we're going to see a significant retrenchment in farm income in 2024 relative to the last couple of years.
Mhm.
We have to have a safety net in place to help protect farmers' interests, to help reduce the risk that they undertake, planting a crop, raising raising livestock, putting animals on feed. All of those are high risk, high capital intensive activities. And so finding a way to kind of protect them from the most extreme of those risks, whether it be weather related, market related, et cetera, is critical. And that's the role that the Farm Bill plays in many cases. So we're anxiously engaged in the discussion on both the House and Senate and with both parties as well around drafting a farm bill, finding a common set of principles and bringing those forward into reasonable legislation with hopes of having legislation signed before the end of this year. We had a 1-year extension to the farm bill that expires at the end of September. So the stakes are real, and getting some changes put in place is something that we view as a very high priority.
Absolutely. Well, very good. Well, it's an exciting year for agriculture in that way, especially with all the buzz around the farm bill and everything. And I'm sure that impacts or will impact, people's desire and willingness to grow more sorghum, amongst other things and everything. But I want to spend a little bit of time, if we can, just talking about this. I've been trying to educate people more as I've been getting more educated about sorghum. I'm excited about this, and here's why. This is a personal thing, but I know it affects a lot of other people. So I turned 40, my guts stopped working properly, and I had to eliminate, unfortunately, everything that was wheat based. And I don't have anything against the wheat growers.
Nope.
Love you guys. But I can't eat it, which means I'm not drinking any beer. I'm not drinking any whiskey. And I'm not eating regular pizza or pasta. And Greg, my mother-in-law lives with us here in North Carolina. She's Italian. Right. I mean,
you're still in the house. That's the amazing thing. She has
yeah, that's for another podcast. But no, but in all seriousness, though, I mean, it's very disheartening, right? When you go through that, because you grow up just eating whatever and doing whatever, and then life hands you a different deck of cards, and you got to play them. So I've been exploring, experimenting, and I'll be honest, I am as healthy as I have been in a long time as a result of really just eating cleaner, lower carb, eating better. But along the way, I discovered some beer that's made from sorghum. And this was really exciting because it doesn't feel like sacrifice. It doesn't taste like
you're
drinking a Truly or one of these White Claw things. I mean, it actually,
absolutely,
it feels like beer. It doesn't feel like a sacrifice. And so I've been consuming a little bit of that. I'd say it's a little expensive, so I'd like to get the price down.
Well, as we increase sorghum acres, we increase the supply, we can drive that price.
That is why you're here, Greg. You're on this podcast so that we increase those acres so I can spend less on beer. That's the deal.
I think though that the important part of what you just walked through, it's something that I think a lot of people are facing today as we get late in the middle and later part of our life, those dietary adjustments that we have to make so that we can continue to enjoy the quality of life that we had in our younger years. We've experienced some of that celiac disease here in our own house. And so we too have had to make those changes and move away from gluten-based products to gluten-free products. Sorghum has filled that bill for us well. I would, there's some really exciting, and for your benefit and for the benefit of the folks who will see the podcast, there's a website that the sorghum industry's put together with a lot of menu ideas and recipes and things. And it's kind of cool because it's called sorghumsecrets.com. And so if you get a chance, go visit that. You'll get some great ideas. If you got an Instapot and access to whole sorghum, there's a number of things that you can do and find that as a replacement into your diet that will help you kind of continue to experience those benefits that you found.
Well, I find it to be much less inflammatory in general, right, to the gut and to everything. So I think it's good for probably everybody to take a look at, regardless of what your body allows you or doesn't allow you to eat. So I think that's good. From my understanding, though, I mean, this is a crop that stands up fairly well in the water category too, right? It takes significantly less water than corn.
Correct. As we where we live here in the high plains over the Ogallala Aquifer, where there's been so much said about the decline of the aquifer, the inability to kind of change that stem that tide of decline. Sorghum has a real role to play, and it's interesting because we're seeing it happen in two ways. One's a fairly obvious one. It's just an acre shift from corn to sorghum grain. The other one is a shift from corn silage to sorghum forage and sorghum silage. And this part of the world is seeing a significant increase in the number of animals on feed, some in feedlots, but the big increases are in dairy cows. Where I live here in Dodge City, south of me, 5 miles right now, is a huge cheese plant going in. There's going to be probably somewhere near an additional 100,000 dairy cows within a fairly small radius of Dodge City coming in that hadn't been here before, that are going to be new to the area, and that milk is destined to support that cheese plant here that Hillmar Cheese is building in Dodge City, Kansas. So we're seeing that same shift happen here with as the livestock demands increase. Those farmers have to be as efficient as they can in terms of using the water that they have access to produce the most quantity and at the most reasonable price, forage and grains that they can to support the livestock industry.
Beautiful. Wow. That's I think it's really cool. This is the second podcast I've had talking just about sorghum, and I'm fascinated with it and been diving into it. So
I'm just hurt that I wasn't the first, though.
Yeah, that's well, as you know, that's just a scheduling thing. That's neither of them are public yet, but it's I really am. I feel like I'm becoming an advocate for this particular crop, and it solves a problem for me. And so that's, I think, for many of us where it starts, right? But I also see, wow, okay, there's global demand. There's demand in China for this stuff, for the alcohol that they drink in, but just right here, man. I mean, I went, somebody said you could make homemade noodles from sorghum flour. Well, I go down to I had to go through 3 different grocery stores to find some sorghum flour. So there's obviously a demand for it because it was gone. It was sold out.
Let us know how we can continue to funnel ideas your way around that. But yeah, sorghum flour, whole sorghum as a replacement for some of the other starches that you might have in your diet. There's some really clever ideas out there to help address that gluten issue, that intolerance that people have, and just become such a frustrating part of their life.
Mm-hmm. I think it would be interesting to know more too. So I have a daughter who's type 1 diabetic. So since she was 2 years old, when she developed type 1 diabetes, and she's 16 now. So I've been watching this for a long time. We watch certain types of foods that she eats, and then how each one of those impacts her blood sugar differently. Right. So certain foods have a higher glycemic impact. A glass of milk has a higher glycemic impact than say, obviously, a glass of water or something without carbohydrates, but it acts different than, say, maybe a glass of orange juice.
Absolutely.
Because the body processes different sugars in different ways and these kind of things. So we started looking at different types of flour, that have maybe a higher protein base, then those impact the body differently. And, we all know type 2 diabetes is such a prevalent issue across the broad scope. Some 60 to 70% of Americans have it or are pre-diabetic. And so, man, if we can get people eating foods like this that have a lower glycemic impact, we can actually do a lot of good. So that's my intentional nutrition statement for the day.
That's awesome. Well, and I know it's intentional because it's affecting those that are most close to you. So
absolutely, good stuff. And well, let's talk leadership and intentional leadership a little bit more. I would love to learn what we can from your years of experience around the industry. And we know one of the big challenges that everybody has is around talent development, talent attraction and retention. And so I'm just curious on your take and how intentional leadership has either helped you attract and retain currently or historically, or what you're seeing in the demographic that you now serve.
Absolutely. Well, the demographic I'm serving today, we're very fortunate. We're growing staff. We've grown the sorghum staff in the last couple of years by about threefold, which is phenomenal. Now, that doesn't mean that there doesn't come with its challenges. You still have to find those best people, best fit, make sure that they're in the right seat on the right bus and playing their role. So it still requires a degree of an intentionality, even if you're in a growth phase. Um, in the past, when it's really been hiring to fill a particular niche, I think a couple of skills that I utilized probably most frequently. One was using any of a variety of evaluations that you could use to evaluate not only candidates but what your desired person in that position might be, and that's an interesting twist to make. How do you evaluate a position and match the personality of the hire to what you anticipate being the most important attributes? And so you've got to use the people that are going to work around that position to help you define those attributes. But we saw some real benefits to employing that sort of a strategy in a way where we were not only intentional in the hiring process, but we were intentional in defining what we thought our key attributes needed to be in that position. So, there are tools out there. We rely on our gut a lot when it comes to hiring people. I've read a lot of resumes. I've interviewed a lot of people. My gut will tell me when I'm right. Well, my gut's let me down, and being intentional has greatly improved my success rate in finding that perfect fit and bringing that person on board that really complements the rest of the team.
Yeah. I can't say enough about that, man. I mean, I have done the exact same thing in the past, and then you end up investing more time trying to air quote fix that person that your gut helped you hire, as opposed to have someone that can really lead. And I don't know about you, I'm just at a stage in my career where I don't want to spend time putting out fires and fixing problems all the time. I want somebody who if I have 2 open positions right now, anybody that's looking, reach out. But I'm being very particular with those, and my wife and I have a saying, right? And it's around when we're making a selection on anything. I don't care what it is, restaurant, house, when we bought this house, whatever it is. The saying is, once we establish a standard for how that person gets to be on our team, how they get to show up, who they are, the place that we're picking, the place that we're going, the quality of the hotel. My wife likes nice things. It has to be this or something better. Okay. Now, I go on the road. I'm pick a 2-star. I don't care. I just need a place to put my head down and go to sleep. I take my wife on the road. Okay, we're going to upgrade, right? Because it's going to be this or something better. And I say that in jest, but we do that in how we run our business now too, because we look at, how we have a director of sales position open, and we're going to bring on some new coaches later on this year and certify them, and then have them work with some of our clients. And you can't work with just anybody, right? They have to be able to do the basics and then a little bit more, and something better than I can do, this or something better.
Right. Absolutely. And it's an additive effort. I think, I've seen that probably most clearly while Sorghum folks, while I didn't start working for them until November, I've known Tim our CEO, his whole 30-year career, and I actually knew his predecessor. So a long time of watching the Sorghum folks. Always have been impressed at how that group kind of punched above their weight class, and that continues to be the case today. And it's really the logic, similar to what you had just said, Mark, a moment ago. If we can't bring somebody in that helps us continue to play out above our weight class and to continue to be successful beyond what people perceive our limitations to be in acres and size of market, et cetera, then they're probably not the right fit for the team. You're going to have somebody who will stretch themselves to the point of saying, yeah, we're going to go beyond where the normal limits or normal bounds might be for other folks.
Yep. Yeah, one of those things that we've developed since I started studying the intentional leadership now almost a year and a half ago, as we make this on May the 1st of 2024. So I've been in this since January of 2023, almost every day, either studying my own intentions, studying intentional leadership of others, doing these podcast interviews. I've just been immersed in this concept because I think it is really, really important. And the statement, the through line that keeps coming through that I've discovered is that all the times in life that I become the most resentful is always because of the times in life that I've been the least intentional. And when you think about when employers become resentful, leaders become resentful of their teams, people on their team, it's usually because they have to keep fixing the same problem over and over and over. That person's not progressing.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
And often what we find is we could have been more intentional either in the selection or the onboarding or the ongoing training. And
Yep.
one of those three levers pulled at the right time would have saved you a lot of headaches. And unintentional leaders, unfortunately, are just not getting that done.
Very true. Very true. It's a great observation, and one that if you've been in a leadership position very long, you've experienced it at least once in your career, and it's just time to learn from it. So use the tools and learn from it.
It's one of those things I like to say. There's only one way to learn that.
The most painful and most expensive way. Yeah. There's only one class.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yep. Well, good. So talk to us a little bit about culture building and how intentional leadership plays into culture building in your experience.
Yeah, I mean, culture is for us right now. Culture is an interesting word because we're pulling a lot of new people in quickly and trying to onboard and put them to work and draw their greatest strengths out as efficiently as we can. That doesn't always lend itself to a lot of time to talk about and instill culture. And I think it's one of the things that at the leadership level that we have at Team Sorghum, it's an area where we're gonna focus some time and attention. How do we make sure that our leaders are conveying clearly the expectation is for culture? How do we convey that notion of playing above your weight class? How do we help? How do I help a 20-something-year-old understand an axiom that sounds like an old dad joke that is maybe isn't as clearly conveyed or as evident to them?
Mm-hmm.
So I think a big part of his communication, clearly in a voice that resonates well with each of those employees. You got to be vigilant in expressing what your outcomes and expectations are. I think too many times we may skip over that part. We may not make it clear that this is really what we're striving to be about. So we all have that brass ring out there to reach for and to go for as individuals, and then as individuals as part of a team. The other part of that is leadership is not all big mahogany desks and ivory statues. It's rolling your sleeves up. It's getting your hands dirty right alongside your folks and being a part of what they're a part of. Time that I was in the agronomy space, it was walking a irrigated pivot of corn in August when pollen was flying. To appreciate the role that agronomist played at that tough season of the year to make sure that crop was going to make it all the way to harvest. It's those sorts of things that really are relevant, and having an appreciation for understanding where your folks are at and contributing to them is just so critical to establishing that successful and clear cultural expectation.
Mm-hmm. Well, you've stated it very, very well. I mean, culture in general is one of those things that intentionally done and done well it can drive your business and make your life so much easier from a leadership perspective. So good stuff. Well, let's learn a little bit about Greg. Let's dive in. Let's crack the hood open here and see what else we can learn. What Greg, for you, has been the biggest challenge or biggest hurdle that you've had to overcome as a leader?
Yeah. So a lot of years working with and for boards was one of the things that came to mind. And I've worked. I got to tell you, I've been blessed to work for lots and lots of tremendous boards and individuals on those boards. So I've been pretty fortunate. But times when a huge hurdle has been times when a board and staff leadership just can't find that sync. And so you can take out board and put in owners. You can, whatever your organizational situation is, you can replace the people, the titles, if you will, of the people that are involved. But when you're out of sync at that highest level, where staff and leaders, owners, managers, whatever the case might be, are out of sync, are just some of the most frustrating times, because regardless of how hard the team works, regardless of how intentional they are in delivering, if they're delivering the wrong thing to the folks that are in charge, you have such a challenge on your hands. So you got to address it. How do you fix it? You establish everybody's roles and responsibilities, get job descriptions done, those sorts of things. I've written job descriptions for board members in the past, just to help make sure everybody knows what lane they're in, and that they occupy that lane well, and that they respect the lanes on either side of them, in a way that everybody continues to drive in the same direction without an accident down the same superhighway. And that's been a real, it's been a hurdle. It's been few, thank goodness it's been few, but they're real.
Yeah. Well, Greg, yeah, I am delighted actually with this answer, because I have interviewed at least 20 CEOs from all over the ag industry in the last 3-4 months. And I cannot think of anybody who's brought up a challenge, like being challenged with a board being out of sync. And like I know from my work that it happens all the time because I hear about it.
Yeah.
People tell us what's going on, right? And it's a really tough thing. We get a lot of different people in a room with different opinions. They got their own way or their own agendas, in some cases, right? So anytime you have to get a lot of people moving together, but then specifically people that are effectively there or paid to be there to have an opinion, not necessarily to do the work. Right. It can be a big challenge.
Have an opinion, then we'll leave it at that. Have an opinion.
Right. Yeah, I'm not trying to paint you into a corner. And
no. It doesn't happen often, and as you cut your teeth in this business and you spend a little bit more time in it, you can begin to see areas where it may happen, or you can find ways to head it off at the pass, so to speak. Just to make sure that it's amazing how quickly people will respect something like a job description or roles and responsibilities. People are looking for structure. They crave that. I think as a society, our people really crave structure and sense and sensibility and those sorts of things. And so we just can't be afraid to be the one that's standing out there saying, okay, here's what you're going to do, and here's what you're going to do, and here's what I'm going to do. And working in that fashion, we're all going to be more successful and have more joy. Back to our earlier conversation, it's going to be much more fun to go to work every day.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, great. So we talked about challenge. What's been one of the biggest wins for you in your career?
I struggled with this question. In fact, before our podcast, my wife and I grabbed a little quick bite of lunch together, and I said, man, I'm struggling with this question. She's like, well, you got this, you got that. It's hard. And I want to say it's hard. I've been very fortunate over my career to be involved in a lot of wins, ranging from legislative and policy wins to being involved in campaigns and elections to launching new programs, starting new staff. All that I think are all things that I would point to. But I think if I had to settle in on one, it would be the enjoyment you can receive by hiring that. I'd love to hire young people. They're, especially in association work, they're so energetic, and they're kind of got a really pure view of where they want to see things go, and helping them achieve those goals has always been something great. The challenge with that is you develop them into really good staff people, and then somebody comes and steals them from you, and so you have to be okay with the development process, and then planning those people who now, as I'm in kind of the apex of a career. I got folks planted all over the country that are in very powerful roles, who I knew way back when, and it's just really cool to see that metamorphosis occur, and just know that you were a tiny part of that, but you hope that you were a positive part, and one that helped launch one of their success in their career.
Yeah, beautiful answer. I think interestingly enough, man, that is the toughest question for everybody. And I think we're raised to be humble, so
right. Right.
bragging about any big wins. And we've all had big wins, but it's not necessarily in our nature to think about it, which is why I keep leaving the question in, because
Yeah.
people really struggle with this. We need to work on giving ourselves some credit. So I'll give you give you a little pat on the back for doing the work. And the whatever in the Bible it says, you'll know a tree by its fruit, and that's my measurement for my personal success. And I'm like, all right, if I take a good assessment, look around, okay, am I leaving good fruit in my clients and in my team and my kids and so on and so forth. So
absolutely. So well said. And I'm glad you leave it in. Stretch us a little bit when we're on the podcast. We need a little bit of that tugging. And
well, part of this is, imagine, this is just, so it's the 1st of May. This morning I ran the numbers on April downloads on the podcast, and between our podcast downloads and YouTube views, we're well over 1,100 downloads on a podcast that's targeted at a very small number of people. Right. And I have no idea whether that's good or bad, but it felt pretty good to us.
Absolutely.
It exceeded our expectations. If you look at that's over 600 hours of people listening to this podcast. And I'm going to assume that somewhere in the background, a young person may be listening to this and getting to hear someone like you share your thoughts on leadership after a few decades of being out there fighting the good fight. Right. And if there's one thing that they hear, and it's like, you know what, Greg is a guy who really cared about, the fruit that he left behind. I want that to be a goal for me.
Mm-hmm.
We've done, the whole purpose of the podcast has been accomplished. If one,
absolutely.
Right. So
yeah, that's a beautiful perspective to have on it. Right. So there's a lot of other things that people may take away, but if they found that nugget, and that nugget was important to them and helped them achieve what they were needing at that time, fill that need, stand in that gap, then our work is done. So
you bet. Beautiful. All right, last couple of questions here before we run completely out of time. But who's been somebody that you've admired that helped you along the way?
Yeah, I was thinking about this. I'm like, oh man, historical figures. I've been very fortunate to meet a lot of historical figures along the way, and so I was thinking about that, and then I kind of stopped and I went, who I'm going to use today. I know he's pretty admired by me, and that's my dad.
Mm-hmm.
We lost him about 2 years ago after a courageous battle with cancer. And that's not the story. The story was everything that happened before that, and the friends that he made, family that he left behind, the legacy that he and my mom left behind. It's been such a rewarding thing to be reminded of as kids, as we've kind of worked through the estate. All the stuff that you got to do at the end that's hard, can also be very fulfilling. And I think the coolest thing out of all that, I was raised with 3 sisters, which means there should be a special place in heaven when I get to the gate. I think I get a separate entrance.
You and me both. We got that in common. I like that.
But the 4 of us are closer now than we've ever been, and it was that brought us together, and that was our parents' wish, is that we would, regardless of the circumstances, that you come together and you live that legacy that we've left for you. And so it was tough for me to throw a nod out to somebody like a Ronald Reagan or somebody like that when I got somebody who's a whole lot closer to me that left that kind of an impact.
Fantastic. Great answer. It's been a common reflection, I think, on a lot of men that I've interviewed on the podcast that were impacted by fathers. And the lesson that I take away from that, because every story is cool and unique in its own way when people share it, the importance of men, the importance of the father in the family in America cannot be understated. And that's one of those things when I think about, being in intentional leadership, sometimes you're gonna have to say some unpopular things, and we need more intentional dads and fathers to stand Absolutely. Up and stand in for those families, because that is the bedrock.
Yeah. Couldn't agree more. And as the father of a 17-year-old, I know it's my role as well. And a good friend and a lay minister has a line that I just love. He said, as parents, our job isn't to raise good kids. Our job as parents is to raise good adults.
Mm.
and we can't lose sight of, that longer play. They're going to be adults a whole lot longer than they're going to be kids in their lives. And so all our investment is towards that greater goal.
What, before we go, books and
Yeah.
podcasts or other resources that you feel that you would want to recommend to others?
Yeah, I had a book and it's sitting here on my desk. I don't know if we can even see it on the screen. The title of it is 0 to 1.
Mm-hmm.
The author is Peter Thiel, Thiel. I tell you, I don't know why. I was reading either an art press article he'd done or something, and I was just kind of intrigued by how he wrote. So I ordered the book, and I'm still a book guy. I haven't got into podcasts as well as I need. I need to make that switch. But in the preface, a quick read of a paragraph that just for me sums it all up. It says, of course, it's easier to copy a model than to make something new. Doing what we already know how to do takes the world from 1 to n, infinity. Adding more of something we're already familiar with. But every time we create something new, we go from 0 to 1. The act of creation is singular. It is the moment of creation, and the result is something fresh and strange. He's got a book around that topic. It's written for startups, but I apply it to an ongoing business entity, ongoing relationships. It's a cool read, easy read, quick read. Not easy read. It's a quick read. But I would encourage folks to, if you're in a space like that where you're looking at that remake or that restart or starting something new, understand that going from nothing to 1 is much tougher than going from 1 to anything else.
Great stuff, man. That's a great recommendation, and thanks for reading a bit of it too. That's good. Got it written down here. We'll make sure it's in the show notes as well. So,
cool.
Greg, we're just about out of time. Any last thoughts that you'd share on intentional leadership, sorghum? How do we get a hold of the sorghum board? The talk,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, like everybody, go visit our website, sorghumgrowers.com. Would love to answer questions of people. The diet issue is real and something that we work hard. We were at the Commodity Classic. It was fun. We had a booth up on the 3rd floor in Houston at the convention center, and it was hard to drive people up to the 3rd floor because all the new paint was on the 1st floor, and everybody wanted to go see the shiny stuff and John Deere had all their big stuff, blah blah blah. But we had in our little probably 20 by 20 booth, we had people in there all the time because we had sorghum snacks that were available to folks. They wanted to ask those questions about diet and how can I make changes here and still really make my diet work for me, help me feel healthier and more energetic. And so it was cool. It was my first Commodity Classic with one of the grains organizations that sponsors it, but we had more fun than anybody else did. I know that for sure. Yeah, so if you're interested in diet tips and some of the nutritional aspects of sorghum, it's an ancient grain, sorghumsecrets.com. The Sorghum Checkoff has done a phenomenal job domestically and internationally in product development, product promotion. Just a shout out to them for the work that they do. We just appreciate them every day, and we're glad to be a sister organization of theirs.
Beautiful. Well, I've got some of that sorghum popcorn that you guys had there at the Commodity Classic. It's excellent. So people got to get their hands on some of that. Greg, Absolutely. Thanks for doing the show, man. It's a pleasure, and you're a great resource. Thank you.
Mark, thank you. Congratulations on the work that you're doing with this podcast. We appreciate it so much, and anxious to help out in any way I can.
Got it.